Africa Prime, brought to you by Jamison's Select Reserve.
Welcome back. You are watching Africa Prime. We're talking to Nazeem Howa. He is the CEO of the New Age. Now, Nazeem, before we went to the break, we spoke, of course, about the competition that you guys facing and some of the issues that you face. But perhaps as we begin the second part, let's define the philosophy of the New Age. I particularly want to define that philosophy because I do remember reading somewhere, and you described it then. This was in an interview last year as you were coming in. You said the newspaper is proudly South African, yet fiercely independent. Are the two mutually exclusive?
Certainly, I think from our point of view, we are going to champion the cause of South Africa. But in doing that, we have to be independent about what we do. We can't be a government lapdog. We have to actually drive what is positive. We have to applaud when government does well. Yeah. But we have to also criticize when government does badly.
Yeah. Some would point to the relationship between your shareholders and some of the government officials.
I find that quite an amusing kind of approach.
Why?
Simply because I come from independent.
Newspapers where you spent 15 years.
I spent 15 years at independent newspapers. Those in power are always attractive, and newspaper owners like to meet them. There's constant engagement between business leaders and government. So why would there be an issue between our owners and government?
Is it a difficult thing to be independent of government?
I think certainly not. I think if you look at our Constitution and our Bill of Rights, we need to be independent. We need to be able to play a watchdog role over what happens in our country. We have to offer that mirror to society. So I don't think it is that tough at all. I think it's something that we have to do.
But of course you operate within a media space which has been characterized by what appears to be growing confrontation between the government and particularly the print industry over the perception that government is trying to crowd out the media and control what the media puts out. Let's perhaps get your view of that environment that we are operating in now. What's your sense?
The past 12 months have probably seen me change my perceptions quite significantly. Sure. I think the way we've been reported on, and that's probably an example of how other people are being reported on, I think there has some level of irresponsibility has crept into the media.
What do you mean?
Well, sometimes I think, we rush into print too often. I think very often we kind of do not get the facts straight. And our remedy is normally to offer a right of reply a week or two later. Certainly New Age has found that, has fell victim to that very, very often. And that has changed my perspectives quite a lot. And it's something we're driving into our business right now. Get the facts right first time. Right. A right of reply a week or two later is not good enough. Sure. I think in terms of that aspect, I think the media has to get its own house in order. Right. I think we've got work to do there.
Okay. That's on the one side. What about on the other side? Has government done anything to enhance the environment within which the newspaper industry is operating in, or has it made it worse?
Well, I think, there's been engagement with government about a lot of these issues, and I think where we miss each other very often is that I think press releases and press statements are a challenge. I think politicians should be engaging firsthand and directly more often with the media. And nobody can tell the story of South Africa or what they're doing about the story of South Africa better than the politicians themselves.
Are we listening to each other, do you think?
I think we're speaking past each other.
It's a dialogue of the deaf here.
I think we're speaking very much past each other. And I think, in the hype of speaking past each other, we're going to battle to find each other. I think very often it's better to keep silent for a minute and listen to the other party and then to try and find some kind of resolution on issues.
But why are we speaking past each other? Why are we unable to hear each other?
It's a question I ask myself very, very often, because if you look at the latest conflict around the latest bill, we seem to be going along very, very well, and all of a sudden we kind of just miss each other. And it really is about the whole question of a public interest defense. Now, I would have hoped that we could have continued speaking for a period of time to try and find resolution around that one. But, perhaps the challenge facing us is, on the one hand, we must believe that our Constitution will protect us and our right to report correctly going forward.
Yeah. The Public Information Bill, let's speak about this one. It's the elephant in the room, if you like. The Public Information Bill, where does the New Age stand in relation to that?
Certainly, from our point of view, we believe that we should be left to report as we see fit. Sure. We should, as part of our challenge, we must be able to report on corruption without fear of recrimination or repercussions afterwards. Yeah. So we're very clear about that one. I think where our challenge is right now is that the bill was forced through Parliament so quickly.
Right.
And we would have hoped that there would have been an opportunity to talk further around.
Yeah. But let's be fair to government. Does the country, and I'm using the word advisedly here, does the nation require this bill?
I think on the one hand, we've got to accept that government must have the right to protect sensitive information. How you define sensitive information is a key issue, and that's perhaps where we're talking past each other, I would argue. But I think, in any country, in any democracy, you must have the ability to protect sensitive information. I think perhaps where we're missing each other is it's not protect all information. And I think that's where further dialogue is required to say, what is it that we need to protect and what is it that we should be fair to report?
Absolutely. Let's talk about another bugbear, the whole issue around the proposal to have a media tribunal. Where are you?
My view is very simple. I would prefer not to have a government-regulated body.
Yeah.
I would prefer to have self-regulation.
But is self-regulation working? And I'm asking this question because we saw what happened in the UK, where you have had self-regulation for years and years and years, and you've now had this situation where self-regulation has been proven not to have worked.
At the risk of gaining further enemies out there, Godfrey, I'm going to say it's not working as it should.
Sure.
And I think, self-regulation works when us as publishers and we as editors take the process very, very seriously. I think in some quarters we're not taking it as seriously as we should be. And again, we speak from bitter experience of being reported on in a very unfair manner.
Nazeem, you sit in an important position because you're one of us, if you like. And when I say one of us, I mean you are a former journalist yourself, and in fact left the profession just 10 years ago. But now you are sitting on the other side in an executive capacity. So you should be in a better space perhaps to give us an independent, not so much independent view, but perhaps a better view in terms of where we are getting it wrong here in terms of self-regulation and what needs to be done to fix that.
I think the whole question of our journalism and the preparation of our journalists is a very, very important issue. We're going to be launching a cadet school next year simply because we believe we have to reinvest in our journalism going forward. I think, all the media houses need to, in my mind, cooperate a lot more closely to set standards, to set processes, and so on. I think, the whole question of press freedom is a very important issue, but I think it comes with a certain set of responsibilities.
Yeah.
And that responsibilities is to really understand, have I got it right? Have I been fair to the person on the other side before we just rush into print?
Yeah.
I think my concern right now is very often we're doing a superficial job, and perhaps it's got to do with the brain drain, if you will, out of the newsrooms. But we have to reinvest in our newsrooms to get quality back and to get processes right.
Yeah. Nazeem, I've got you into a corner here because at the same time I've got you to say self-regulation hasn't worked. At the same time, I've also gotten you to say government is not trying to be coming up with the regulation that is coming up. But clearly the fact that self-regulation is not working vindicates government to a degree to say something is wrong here and government is reacting to something.
I'm one of those believers who think that the media should be given space to actually fix the self-regulation, and I believe we can do that. Right. I think we've got to admit we've got a problem, and then we've got to fix it. Sure. I really am not in favor of a regulated media, a government-regulated media.
Yeah. How did we get here? Is it the fault of government that we are in this space now where there is a perception that government wants to muzzle the media?
I think we've created it in an emotional
Who's
vacuum.
we, Nazeem?
I think we as media generally.
Sure.
Because I think, if we're honest.
Why?
Well, I think, I'm one of those who would argue that Twitter has caused a big problem in our industry because it's caused a bit of a herd mentality where we kind of accept concepts as being fact without checking those facts. And I think that emotional kind of drive has caused a bit of a challenge for us because now we believe things before we check the facts. So I think we've got ourselves into a bit of a state around a lot of these issues. I don't want to blame government for that. I think we've been our own worst enemies in terms of ensuring we reinvest, and that's media owners, including ourselves, investing in journalism, investing in the quality of journalism, because then nobody would have any queries about the media tribunal versus the press ombudsman's office. I think we've got a very strong person in charge of the press ombudsman's office. I think a very good team.
Sometimes I do say thank God for Twitter because it reinforces why they're journalists. Because we don't just go and put out a story. If you're a good journalist, you first of all begin by checking your facts. And you also check the other side of the story. Whereas Twitter just goes and blurts it out.
That is my concern with what's happening to our journalism. You know, we went through a very bad patch of media focus on our owners and ourselves. And, you know, I was finding it very strange that competitor newspapers came to us with the same set of questions.
Yeah.
I then kind of off the record said to the editors, don't you find it strange that you both have the same set of questions? And my point to them really was, you know, as journalists, do we not owe it to ourselves to say, why is somebody telling me this? What's his or her motive for telling me this? And that's part of the professionalism I think we need to bring back into the craft.
Sure. Let me ask you a tricky question here. To what degree do you think politics and ideology is responsible for some of the poison we have seen creeping into our industry? And I'm talking about politics and ideology advisedly. Both on the one hand, the right-wing side, those who assert there's only one way of doing things and that's the way they've done them in the past. And those who say, like yours, you say we ought to be proudly South African and be able to criticize government and praise government when the need arises.
I think, you know, the difficulty is the times we live in. Between now and the end of 2012, the ANC's next elective conference, I think we're going to have to be very, very careful as journalists. I think the ANC is in a position where it has more factions than it wants right now. Those factions are all leaking information, and I feel sorry for journalists right now because you're being bombarded with lots of information.
Sure.
It's an exciting time.
Absolutely.
But it brings its own set of challenges to us as journalists. Again, to ask the question, why am I being told this? What is the motive?
Yeah.
And that's, you know, beyond just checking the facts and making sure you've got everything right.
Yeah.
But I think ahead of 2012, I think the big question we always have to say to ourselves is we understand the ground on what we're sitting, what's happening below us, and we've got to reflect on it when we write each and every story.
Yeah. Let me ask you another tricky question. Tricky here because I'm asking about the ANC. And I'm asking if you think there is a body or a belief within the ANC that the media is out to get us.
I think that would exist, and that would exist in any organization. But, you know, I think the media is so divided amongst itself that it's very difficult for the media to come together with a cohesive plan, if you will, to do that. So I don't believe that's the case, but I think there are people who believe it, certainly.
Inside the ANC. So how do we get out? How do we bring reason and how do we bring the national interest back into this dialogue to recreate an atmosphere and an industry that is in the South African interest?
You know, I always reflect on South Africa. You know, we came back from the brink and we were able to manage the transition in this country without a single drop of blood being shed. For me, that tells us about the ability of South Africans to talk through issues and to find common ground. In my mind, I think we've got to step away from the emotion right now and sit down and have those discussions.
Nazeem Howa, thank you very much. CEO of the New Age, which turned 1 year today. You've been watching Africa Prime. I'm Godfrey Mutizwa. Goodbye.